Hi, I'm Steve Podmore, and in this presentation, I'm going to talk about transform global investments. So that means the balance sheet investing that we intend to do out of the capital we intend to raise. And this is really about building a bank, the new World Bank, but better, in the optimum way. So we will be building our own, but also we'll be acquiring or investing in other entities that are ideal for what we're seeking to do. So as we've talked about previously in other videos, and there's other videos that talk about the bank itself and the asset and fund management and how we will run the fund, the media aspects and the media and technology properties under Transform Global Media. But today we're going to talk about, or right now we're going to talk about Transform Global Investments, as I've said. So as we talked about, or as we're showing here, it's about investments and acquisitions for capacity and for scale. And what I'm going to show is the target investment rounds, how much we'll be investing out of them into those platforms, what is left over for working capital and other elements of the business, and also I'm going to touch on some exit opportunities. But first, we're going to talk about the actual categories themselves. So first up is events and publishing. Well, in order to have the greatest footprint with investors, impact investors, public policy people around the issues around the Sustainable Development Goals, and many other parties besides, the goal is to both invest in and acquire a number of target events and publishing businesses. Now, this will be giving us capability, but also existing databases and existing content and existing relationships. Now, having spent 15 years working on this business model, I have a very clear view on some of those initial investments that we can make that will give us incredible outreach and ability to participate with the target audiences. So we can, it's wrong to say buy credibility, but in some respects you can do. Now, some events and publishing businesses, we will just sponsor or appear or attend. But in others, where there's such a high value add, the goal is to use some of the capital in that arena. Now, consulting and deployment. There are a number of organizations that provide added value services in the development world, in the alliance building and coalition building world, and also in the deployment of capability that we will need. We're not going to spell out, and I'm not going to name names in this presentation, but suffice it to say that the goal for the investment and acquisition team is really to underwrite the initial assumptions and views that we have, and to make these investments or acquisitions in a timely fashion and in the right order and sequence. Marketing communication, clearly there's the ability to add expertise in social media, in video production, and of course we'll be building some of that internally, quite a lot of it internally, but on occasion there will be entities that we can invest into and acquire that will dramatically increase our capability in these arenas. Impact measurement and reporting is a key one. Transaction and matching platforms. There is a number of new impact-related stock exchanges that are in development, and also, of course, a number of matching platforms for matching deals and investors in the impact space. Now, we don't need to acquire everything, and we won't. And we don't need to invest in everything. But there's certain ones where there's high value add. This will give us a competitive edge. And to say a competitive edge, it's also a little bit misleading, because we actually don't think there's any real competition for what we're doing. The competition is time. We want to address the Sustainable Development Goals in the fastest possible way. and we will be supporting an ecosystem. So the goal isn't to do everything, it's to do what's necessary and then get out of the way. There will be many players. It's a massive, massive market, but we do want to be in a leading position to have the greatest potential impacts. Obviously, impact investment banking. There are a number of boutiques. Often they're at subscale. They are doing important things, but they don't have access to the capital that they really need. So they're brokers, and very often they're struggling to broke and to match appropriately. Whereas by being part of the Transform Global model, we believe those parties can actually have much greater impact. They can earn well, perhaps a lot better than they are currently performing and delivering revenue. But over time, they can be part of something that will be very significant indeed. Placement agencies. Now, for those who are unaware, a placement agency is a fundraising house for other funds. So they essentially are responsible for going to institutions and other high net worth investors and clients, and essentially helping place their capital into funds that are appropriate. And on the other side of that, they are raising on behalf of those funds. So we will certainly do that ourselves, but there's a number of placement agents that we think would be better housed within the broader model and the fully supported model for Transform Global. There's a strategy really to find these best-in-class players and on fair terms at the right time to either partner with them or to invest or in some cases fully acquire them. And then technology. There's a part of the business which is around the collaboration and rating mechanisms. We call it the Augmented Intelligence Decision Support Engine. Some of that will be homegrown, but some parts we recognize there are appropriate technologies that we can buy in, utilize ourselves, but also help grow their models independently. So the goal with these investments or acquisitions, again, isn't to be their sole client, but is to grow their businesses, but to utilize their capability for what we're doing as well. Now, what about the money? Well, again, we're raising a small amount initially, £3 million. So there isn't a lot of capital to make investments from that. So from that initial $500,000 from the initial 3 million will go into supporting Power and Builder, as we've talked previously. And that will be with probably a safe, a simple agreement for future equity and real value add that we want to deliver in for those. And 2.5 is for working capital. That's for Big Crowd and funding the globalgoals.tv and the talent necessary to do the bank and the following part of the fundraise. So you can see here there's a £20 million investment budget, but those who have a sharp eye will recognize that in another presentation, it shows 15 million is actually being allocated to the SDG 360 Game Changer Fund so that it can make those investments into Power and Builder. And that's true. The other 5 million would be sitting internally for essentially that balance sheet investing budget. There is a slight difference. One is the money to establish the fund and make those 2 direct investments, but the other 5 million will sit internally, and 30 million is working capital. So then when we do the 100 million, the combined raise, 20 million will be balance sheet investing and 80 million will go for working capital. Now we know that 10 of that is to cover the retainers for the other banks who will partner on raising the fund. 20 of that is for Big Crowd and 20 is for funding the globalgoals.tv. That leaves £30 million, and that 30 million is to add to the talent. Some of it will go to the initial budget for the foundation. About 5 million will go to the foundation budget. So 25 million would be left over to really ramp the other parts of the model and enable us to close the raise of the fund. When we do that, there's a £400 million investment. And at that point, 100 million would be made, would be used for investing into those balance sheet activities. 300 would be working capital. We know 100 will go to Big Crowd and 100 will go to funding the globalgoals.tv. So that leaves a further 100 on top for further working capital into the bank. Then when the billion is done, we have a 400 million budget for investments, 200 of additional for working capital, but partial exits mean we would be spending about 400 million to pay out existing investors a partial exit so they can take some money off the table. It means investors don't have to wait 6, 7, 8 years for a full return or a partial return. They can get a partial return perhaps within 2, 3 or 4 years. That is our target, certainly with that 2 to 3 year period. And that additional capital would be used in the investment to position for the IPO of the fund, ideally within a 3-4 year period. And from that 2.5 billion, $1 billion would be allocated to the investment budget, and 1.5 billion, as you saw very quickly. If I can go back might be able to go back a slide. Yeah, and 1.5 billion is allocated to the to working capital. Now, of course, the working capital requirements will increase because many of those investments that we might make will also have capital requirements. But the goal basically, and just to be clear, is the capital structure, which we'll explain in a separate video. It's the Transform Global Investment Opportunity video. It shows how the restricted impact options for employees, there's also a portion available for acquisitions and investments and the employees of those entities. So although we're talking about a cash investment budget of 1.5 billion over that, from that 4 billion or so that we intend to raise, that will be topped up by those restricted impact options, those performance options that are based on the attainment of which is based on financial performance, but also the impacts that we target and achieve as well. So that means it's not just about the cash. Of course, for some of those rewards and exits, we will tie a level of performance in. There will be discipline. It won't be blank check, closed eye type acquisitions or investments. There will be discipline, but it's really about getting people who share our mission, who share the vision. It isn't about hiring and firing very quickly. It's not just about investing in technology. It's about finding the people who want to join this shared mission and giving those owners and investors a fair and reasonable exit if appropriate, but a long-term piece which is more important. And of course, that part is really about incentivizing the talent. So there's enough left in the model to do that, and to do it really, really well. So that concludes this part on the Transform Global Investments, the opportunity for balance sheet activity. I do encourage you to watch other videos in this updated series that talk about the bank, the fund, the updates with Big Crowd and funding the globalgoals.tv, and with Power Builder. Yes, so take your pick, have a look at these other videos, and if you want to reach out, please do so. You can contact me directly through the form on the transformglobal.co website. You can enter my room at Clubhouse, fundingtheglobalgoals.tv, or any other media, social media accounts. And of course, you can tell me how you might like to get involved, whether you like this, whether you've got an acquisition suggestion, whether you might want to work with us as part of the core team, the founding team that we're recruiting at the moment, or as this progresses, whether you might have investors that you think you'd like to introduce, or you might be or represent an investor yourself. Of course, we're raising pretty large sums, 3 million, then 50, and then the follow-on sums thereafter. But the more people who know about this, the better. So thanks for watching, and hope to speak to you again soon.